In the shadowy corners of scientific exploration, where ambition often outpaces ethics, lies the story of Project Chimera. Deep within the crumbling walls of the long-abandoned Blackwood Research Facility, a clandestine experiment was underway. The subject was a young man, known only as Subject Zero, an individual with a reported knack for uncanny intuition. The goal was audacious and terrifying: to unlock and amplify the latent psychic potential of the human mind. The lead scientist, Dr. Aris Tournay, believed he was on the verge of a breakthrough that would redefine human existence. He saw in Subject Zero not a person, but a key to a door humanity wasn't even aware existed. The initial phases of the experiment were deceptively simple. Subject Zero was exposed to a regimen of low-frequency electromagnetic waves and a cocktail of proprietary At first, the results were subtle. He could guess the next card in a deck with startling consistency. He could describe the contents of a sealed box without ever seeing inside. Dr. Thorne and his small, secretive team were ecstatic. They meticulously documented every success, every flicker of extraordinary ability. They were charting new territory, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. But the map they were drawing was leading them into darkness. Within a few weeks, things began to change. Subject Zero started complaining of headaches, followed by a persistent, low hum that no one else could hear. He would stare into empty corners of the room, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and recognition. He told the researchers he was hearing voices, not just one, but a cacophony of whispers, overlapping and indistinct, like a radio tuned to 1,000 dead stations at once. He described them as echoes from tomorrow, fragments of conversations that hadn't happened yet, warnings of accidents that were yet to occur. The team initially dismissed these as side effects, the strain of the procedure manifesting as auditory hallucinations. But then, the predictions began. It started small. He'd warn a technician not to use a specific centrifuge, only for it to malfunction violently minutes later. He'd tell Dr. Thorne to delay his drive home, and Thorne would later pass a multi-car pileup on the exact stretch of road he would have been on. The accuracy was chilling. It was no longer intuition. It was Subject Zero was seeing the future, not in grand visions, but in disjointed, terrifying snapshots. The power was growing, but so was the toll it was taking on him. The line between what was real and what was a premonition started to dissolve. He would react to events that hadn't happened, flinching from unseen blows, answering questions no one had asked. He'd talk about people he'd never met, describing their lives and their secrets with intimate detail. His mind, the very thing they sought to empower, was becoming a prison. He was adrift in a sea of temporal paradoxes, drowning in the flood of information pouring into his consciousness from every possible timeline. Sleep offered no escape. His dreams were even more vivid, filled with nightmarish visions of collapsing cities and silent, screaming faces. Dr. Thorne, blinded by his ambition, pushed forward. He saw the mental degradation not as a warning sign, but as a transitional phase. He believed that Subject Zero's mind was simply adapting, rewiring itself to process this new, unprecedented level of perception. The team was divided. Some shared Thorne's optimism, while others grew deeply concerned. They saw the fear in the young man's eyes, the way he would clutch his head and beg for the voices to stop. He was no longer a willing participant. He was a victim of their creation, a man being torn apart from the inside by a power he could neither control nor comprehend. The final days of Project Chimera were marked by an atmosphere of intense paranoia. Equipment would activate on its own. Security cameras would record static for hours, then show clear footage again. The researchers whispered among themselves, avoiding Subject Zero's gaze, afraid of what he might see in their minds. The whispers he heard were clearer now. He repeated phrases in languages he didn't know, wrote down complex equations he couldn't possibly understand. He spoke of the others, formless entities that moved through the folds of reality, drawn to the beacon of his amplified mind. He claimed they were coming, not for him, but through him. Then came the final night. The overnight logs from the facility show everything was normal until exactly 3:33 a.m. At that precise moment, every single electronic device in the laboratory simultaneously shut down. The backup generators failed to engage. The entire facility was plunged into absolute darkness and silence. An emergency response team was dispatched after the facility missed its mandatory 6-hour check-in. What they found was a scene of perfect, eerie stillness. The laboratory was empty. Not just empty of people, but devoid of any sign of what had happened. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no broken glass. Coffee mugs sat half full on desks. Research notes were left mid. It was as if every person inside had simply ceased to exist in the same instant. They searched every room, every hidden passage of the sprawling, subterranean complex. They found nothing. Dr. Thorne, his team, all of them gone. In the center of the main testing chamber, where Subject Zero had spent most of his final days, they found only one thing. On a small, sterile table sat a single audio recorder, the one he had used to log his thoughts. Its battery was inexplicably full. A lone audio file was saved on it. The investigators played it back, their hearts pounding in the oppressive silence of the empty lab. The recording was just a few seconds long. It contained no screams, no struggle, just the sound of a calm, steady breath, followed by a single, resonant word spoken with a clarity that belied the chaos of his final days. The word was uncontainable. To this day, the Blackwood facility remains cordoned off, a modern ruin holding a chilling secret. The official report lists the incident as an unexplained industrial accident. The disappearance of the research team, a mystery. But for those who have heard the story, who know about Subject Zero and the final cryptic message, a different, more terrifying possibility lingers. Did the experiment succeed too well? Did it open a door that could not be closed? And what came through that door? Or perhaps the most frightening question of all is, what went out? The story of Project Chimera serves as a stark reminder that there are some forces in the universe we are not meant to control, some knowledge we are not meant to possess, and that sometimes, when you stare too long into the abyss, you don't just see what's in there, you become the doorway for it to stare back. Thank you for watching. If you find stories like this fascinating, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the unknown.